faceoff. Shoots it, deflected, right in. Pietrangelo save, rebound. Stastny stopped by Pietrangelo. I don't believe that save. Neither does Peter Stastny. He can't believe the save that Pietrangelo just made on him as Frankie Sparkly. Now that maneuver there to stop and rob Peter Stastny. He should get 5 to 10 for that.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Tendy Talk. I am your host, Joe, better known as Washed Up Goalie on social media. This week was an exciting one for me as I chat with Ron Tugnutt, former NHL goaltender who played in 538 NHL games for 8 different teams. He recorded the first win for 2 different franchises, but is probably most remembered for his 70-save regular season performance against the Boston Bruins that ended in a 3-3 tie. Now, the audio on this episode wasn't great as Ron lives a little bit out in the country. So his Zoom connection wasn't the greatest, resulting in some delays between our responses. But that didn't stop us from having what I think is a great conversation. Before I talk to Ron, though, let's take a short break. So, Ron, thanks for joining me today. Thanks for taking some time out of your evening and taking, some time to talk goaltending.
No problem at all. I look forward to it.
Yeah. And, before we get too deep, we really have to give a shout out to your wife, Lisa, for helping coordinate this and getting everything set up between us. Very grateful for her help.
Well, I'm very retired right now, and I'm very removed from a lot of the game. But I still have a PR person in on staff, and she still takes care of things to keep organized.
Yep. Where would we be without our wives, right?
Yeah.
So, the whole idea behind my podcast, Tendy Talk, is to talk to other goaltenders of all ages and skill levels to, find out about how they found that passion for the game and the position, and just kind of talk goalie to goalie, really, not so much the, specifics of our stats and all of that, just talk about the love of the game. But I also like to touch a little bit on life outside of the game, because that's just important to us, and, finding out what helps us kind of ground ourselves and find our true north so that we can keep going. So I guess my first question for you, even though you're Canadian, and it seems like just like here in Minnesota, once kids are born, they're given skates and a hockey stick. How did you first get started in hockey?
Yeah. Well, mine was through friends. They had kids that were playing hockey, and they seen me running around up and down the hallways. We lived in an apartment building at the time, and I was running and burning off a lot of energy. And my mom and dad were like, "We got to find ways to burn energy off this kid." And they said, "Well, why don't you just put some skates on him and let him go play some hockey and join his friends," because they were my best friends. And my dad played hockey, and he was also a goalie in like men's league, and his men's league before he was younger, he was playing against like Brad Park and guys like that, and he actually played with those guys for fun. But he wasn't a great goalie, but he did play. And my mom said, "I think that's a great idea." And they said, "Okay, well, the first practice is 6 a.m. tomorrow morning." And my mom was, whoa, and so eventually they came around and they started taking me in. I was going in half dressed anyway to the rinks and burning off energy. But I did it as a player to begin with, though.
Yeah, and I think it's important that goalies at the younger ages play out and A, learn to skate, but B, really understand what's going on in front of them, because I've talked to other goalies and we all agree that if you don't understand what's going on in front of you, how are you going to anticipate the play?
Exactly.
So you mentioned your dad played. Go on.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. There's a little bit of time delay on our calls, so I got thrown off where I thought it was time for me to jump in. But yeah, I did say that my dad did play. He was an old-time goalie, I guess you could say, and he loved the sport. But I fell in love with it right away. And as you said, playing as a player first, I truly, enjoyed just getting out there and going. And at the beginning, there was really no games and stuff, so you're always on the ice. So I was happy. Where I changed and became a goalie was when they took me off the ice during games. And I said, well, I don't want to come off the ice. And they said, well, there's only one place you can play to stay on the ice the whole game. And I didn't care if I was just standing there. I just wanted to be on it. So I played net, and they put me in there, and I gave up 10 goals the first game. And my parents said, he'll never do this again. And it was the complete opposite. I said, I was amazing out there. I can't believe how good I was. And lost 10-0. And I thought it was the best thing in the world. So I decided to stay there.
That's awesome. Because a lot of times you just hear goalies, most of us there was something about the equipment. We wanted to try it out. But I like that your journey was because you wanted to be on the ice all the time.
Exactly. And, I think that, the best part about the game is that, I enjoy getting to the rink. I enjoy the excitement. I would never wake up at 5 a.m. for anything else other than hockey. I don't fish. I like golf, but I'm not getting up at 5 a.m. to go golfing. So hockey was the one thing that I swore that would get me out of bed at 5 a.m. and I would be wide awake, excited. And I couldn't wait to get to the rink and be with my friends.
I totally agree with that. I'm not a morning person either, but if there's a skate to be had and I'm available, I'll set that alarm. I'll get up. So once you started playing and found the position and loved that you got to be on the ice all the time, take us through that journey of how you really learned the position and evolved into, a prospect that wound up in the NHL.
Well, there was a guy named George McGrattan in my area who was a goalie coach. And I know people say, well, these new goalie coaches have just started everything, and that's why the position's really grown, the goalie coaches. And I'm 53 years old this week, and I had a goalie coach when I was 7 years old, so they've been around a long time. Mm-hmm. He was more of a disciplinarian guy, where when it's kind of like the way you raise your children now. Back in the day, I would screw up in practice, and he would make me hands on the ice, do push-ups on the ice because I screwed up and I didn't do the right thing. And
yep.
I didn't want to screw up. I didn't want to have to do it. And, to this day, he has passed on, but I owe him a great deal of gratitude for what he did for me. I needed the discipline, but to me, it wasn't a real vicious attack on me to make me do these push-ups. It was more, we're going to do it right, and you're going to do it right, and this is the way it's going to be. And it was very unorthodox stuff. We had flipping and flopping. We had different things that you definitely don't see in today's game.
Yep.
But at the end, he was the one that really got me started, and that was 7 a.m. on Saturday mornings. And then I knew I had to try to stay up late that night to watch Hockey Night in Canada. So to be up at 7 skating and then try to watch an 8 o'clock game, I was falling asleep halfway through the game when I was 7 years old. But he was the start. My dad was also an influence in that department, and until I got to the junior ranks anyway.
It's funny you mentioned the push-ups, because I was coaching my son's baseball team 2 years ago, and these were fourth graders at the time, and any ball that came by them went right through their legs. So the next day of practice, we just lined them up and started hitting grounders to them, and we told them, anything through your legs, you got to do push-ups. Every single boy did a bunch of push-ups that day, but the next game, not one grounder went through their legs, and the other coach looked at us and said, man, what are you guys doing with these kids? And we just said, push-ups. push-ups somehow it drives it into a kid's mind. I don't know why.
Yeah, and it also builds their upper body.
Yeah, exactly. And but it was funny. I was talking to one of the other dads because the next year his son was on a different team, and he said the very first practice, a ball went between his legs, and he instinctively just went down to do push-ups at practice because we continued it the rest of the year. And he said it was kind of funny that right away he started doing push-ups, and his new coach was looking around going, what's this kid doing?
That's great.
So you obviously took to the coaching, and it's really neat that you had a goalie coach at such a young age, because I'm not much younger than you, but we didn't have goalie coaches like that when I was growing up playing hockey in Chicago. We had one for the association, and that was because he was a newly retired AHL goalie that was trying to kind of get his foot in the door and start his own little goalie clinics in the area. So he came to our association for 1 year, offering his services free of charge. But other than that, there really wasn't much instruction. And I know, talking to other goalies of our era, of brown leather pads and making skate saves, turning the foot, the other way, that goalie coaches they were far and few between. A lot of guys, it wasn't until they got to juniors or even some the NHL. So do you feel that really gave you a step above other goaltenders in your area at the time?
Yeah, for me, it was an extra ice time.
Mm-hmm.
But it was also a way to learn from someone that we believed knew more about the position than we did.
Mm-hmm.
And as I noted, I love being on the ice, and it didn't matter if there was no pucks. I did power skating as well as a young goalie. I did power skating with no pucks, with goalie equipment on. Yep. And all the crossovers and the twists and the turns as players, they'd be like, well, you're not supposed to be out here, you're a goalie. And I said, well, I just want to be on the ice and I want to skate. So yep. I think that when I look at my game and the way I played, there's one thing that I always felt gave me the best chance, is that my footwork was as good as any. And the reason why is that I was doing power skating, and whether it's sprinting down the ice or doing crossovers and twists and turns, I just wanted to be on the ice, and I didn't care if there was pucks or no pucks.
I 100% agree with you, and I was the same way. If there was a power skate and the coach said, "Oh, you don't have to show up," I said, "Well, I'm going to." And I was usually one of the fastest skaters on the team because of that, and if we had to do a full lap around the ice, I was usually in the lead until we had to make that turn around the net, because with our skates, you can't make the tight turns like the skaters. So it's just kind of like, well, I'll have you halfway. So as you progress, obviously you wound up making it to the NHL, which I think every kid who puts on the skates, and these days I would say boys and girls, their dream is to make it to the NHL. And let's get the elephant out of the room here. You played 16 years, over 500 games, and what most people think of when they think Ron Tugnutt has to be the fact that you set an NHL record, and that was that you earned the first win for two different franchises, Anaheim and Columbus. When you think back to that and try and wrap your mind around it, that's not an easy feat by any means to get it for two different teams. But at the same time, when we think expansion teams, we don't think of teams like Vegas, where they got lucky. We think of expansion teams like Ottawa and Columbus and Anaheim, where those early years are really tough. What was it like being on those teams and being part of, really building a tradition?
Well, the first years were always easy because the expectations were low. So you'd kind of come in there, and whenever you'd win, it would be a party on the street. So
Mm-hmm.
the expectations were low. For us going to those places, Columbus was, I think, well, actually, the Ducks was, I'd say, the same too. Like both places, we felt that we'd gathered enough pieces that we could at least give a fighting chance defensively. We just didn't think we'd ever score.
Mm-hmm.
Because you'd fill your team with non-talented players because everybody kept their talented players. But what we got is the blue collar guys that would just show up and compete. But those guys would only get 10 goals a season, some of them, right? So,
Right.
we knew it was going to have to be a low scoring game. We knew our defense had to be good. We knew the goalie had to be good. But I would love to say that I had the first two wins for, say, the Chicago Blackhawks and Toronto Maple Leafs, but I got for two expansion teams, and I don't know how much more expansion there's going to be, but even now I sit there and look, I go, I wonder if Fleury's going to go to, Seattle, that gives him. But he's still going to have to find another team to get another win with. So it might be something that stick around for a while.
Yeah, I was thinking that too with Fleury. There's a speculation he may end up in Seattle. Could he tie that record by chance? But you got the win in both of those cities, but you also played for Ottawa in the early years too. So as I think about it, some players might look at it and go, well, I just got bumped from expansion team to expansion team. But when those teams are building, they're really building from the net out. So you had to think in the back of your mind, these organizations wanted me and they were trying to build the team around me. Did it feel like that? And, were you excited to go to these new cities and help bring that excitement to those fans?
Well, I think Anaheim was different. There was 6 goalies drafted, and I was the third for the Ducks. So Glenn Healy and Guy Bear were drafted ahead of me. So that led me to believe that I was now third. But their move was to get 3 goalies because that was the best trading value. And they wanted Guy Bear and as their starter, and they were willing to trade Healy to get a piece of another trade. So that made me the backup to Guy Bear. Now Guy started the season. We lost the first couple games, and they said, "Okay, you're going to go in now against Edmonton," and that was our first game, my first game, and we won. So that's why I probably beat him to the punch there. But the Columbus one's different because I signed as a free agent. I'd like to get that kind of parting gift for myself is that I went to an expansion team because of what they could pay me and what I was going to make, because for the next so many years I was going to need that time to live off of. And so it was different going there as a free agent guy, knowing that they were definitely needing me to be the cornerstone to get them to be competitive. They did sign some other guys. Lyle Oderline was a captain, free agent signing. And, we built a pretty good team there. So, the end of the first year with Columbus, we were knocking on the door actually for a playoff spot, which was quite good.
Yeah, so I remember that because I've got family in Columbus actually, and so I've followed that organization since day one. And I was reading doing my homework, and I was reading that you spoke fondly of your time in Columbus, and in the one article I read, whether they were telling the truth or not, said it was one of your favorite cities to play in. What made Columbus so special at that time?
Well, I'm gonna I think Columbus to me was like a small Canadian city.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt very at home there with my family. We felt very safe with our kids being able to walk up and down the street at night even.
Mm-hmm.
It was an area that I felt very much like home. And I think that if I would have played the full years, I think we would be still living there. But being traded 2 years in, I think that changed everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why Canada's home again. But the funny part of that story, and I'll share it with you, is that the very first year they did a bunch of spoofs on the election year.
Yep.
And they used me and a bunch of things to become president of the United States, which I got votes for. So I'm Canadian, and at the time I was under 35, and I had votes to be the president of the United States. And people, they go, "You can't be serious." I said, no, it actually happened. People voted me in, and they voted, and I got votes, and I lost to Mickey Mouse and so forth, but still I got some votes.
I remember reading that, and it was a great marketing effort by Columbus, and it's something you get to talk about, saying, hey, you had people that wanted you to be president, which is even better. And I agree, Columbus is it's almost a hidden gem in that it's a really nice small town, and as long as you're okay with Buckeye football during the fall, you're going to be fine there. Every time.
Well, I can tell you the year that our first year there,
Mm-hmm.
our first year there was one of the worst years the Buckeyes had in many years. So we got the chance to be at the forefront because the Buckeyes actually had a terrible year, which does not happen very often. So, but I did spend many days, Saturdays, going to watch Buckeye football, especially in Michigan.
Yep. It's funny. Every time I've flown into Columbus, we've flown over the horseshoe. And I think it's probably some kind of FAA regulation that whatever landing pattern you make, it has to fly over the horseshoe when you're going into Columbus. It's the darndest thing. In fact, my uncle who lives there, he's such a Buckeye fan that he doesn't leave the house without a Buckeye nut in his pocket.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he's one of those Buckeye fans. He's been married to my aunt for, gosh, probably 35 years now, and he's still upset with me because I wore a Michigan t-shirt to their wedding reception.
I'm sure you did that on purpose.
Yeah, I did, and he knew it. I was like maybe 7 or 8 years old at the time, and he knew that I did it on purpose, and that was my own decision, not my dad's. So when I said let's address the elephant in the room, you probably thought I was going to ask about the record everybody knows you for, and that's the 70 save performance against Boston. You've been on record talking about it, so I don't want to get into everything you've talked about before, but I've played games where I've seen 50 to 60 shots because my high school team, as much as I loved them, they weren't very good. So I know some of the feeling. How were you feeling during that game? Did you realize at some point you were seeing that much rubber, or did it just feel like, hey, I'm kind of in the zone here?
Well, I knew going into that game it was going to be tough. We were the last place team in the league. They were first.
Yep.
And the Boston Garden was a smaller strike. So things happened way quicker there. I expect I was going to see some rubber that night. I didn't expect that much, but as the game went on, I think the novelty of what was going on kind of took over to the point that everybody was like, "This is getting crazy," and it's almost like Boston wanted to shoot more. And at times, I was looking at my bench, going, "Are you wanting their shots on me? Is that what we're doing?" So, but uh, I couldn't have felt as a goalie new experience. I couldn't feel any better than I did. The energy and the way the puck looked slow, everything just seemed to be clicking. And when I look at that team, we had a really young team in Quebec that a lot of those guys went on to win the Stanley Cup. Not me, but they did win it. And there was a lot of guys on that team that won that cup. So we had stars there. They just weren't ready to participate at the NHL level yet.
Yep.
And years later, they're all in the Hall of Fame, I think, and for good reason.
It's fun to watch the replays of that game because there's almost a turning point where you can tell the Boston crowd was behind you, almost cheering you on. Even though you were the goalie for the other team, they were definitely appreciating what was happening before their eyes.
Yeah, and part of that too was Guy Lafleur was his last game in Boston Garden. I was playing with Guy, which was another highlight of my career, I think. And he got an ovation really late in the third period because they thought if there's a goal, this is his last shift.
Yep.
So he got a huge ovation, and the broadcasters, because I'd watched the game, I think it was Sanderson and somebody else, they said, "Oh, Ron Tugnutt getting an ovation from the Boston crowd," but it wasn't for me, it was for Guy. And, the broadcaster thought it was for me. But I got mine with like 8 seconds to go, and I made probably the luckiest, best catch save of the night on Ray Bork with like 8 seconds to go. And that's when I got the crowd completely, like an ovation from the crowd, which was a little humbling. But to that day, I always said I wanted to play for the Boston Bruins after that day because I could never go wrong if I went and moved to Boston and played there.
Yeah. How did you feel after the game? Because I've read, the next topic I want to talk about is the 5 overtime game you played. Were your legs as dead after that 70 save game as they were after that 5 overtime game, or how were you feeling after that?
Oh no, I was energetic after the Boston game. And, 2 nights later, and I think it was Hartford and no effects. I felt great. I think I got Player of the Week that week. We won nothing at home or something to Hartford, and I think I got the NHL Player of the Week, which was a huge highlight and for a team that was in last and so forth. But that was a 65-minute game. The 5 overtime game was a whole nother beat, where it was more you're battling your body and your mind. And I really never recovered from that to get myself back in the series to be able to help my team after that game. I think I was a small guy. I lost 12 pounds in one night, and trying to find a way to put some weight back on and be able to feel energetic again wasn't easy. And I just don't think. I think that kind of did me in. If we would have won, I think it might have made a difference. It sounds fine, but mentally we would have been up 3-1, and maybe we could have squeezed out another win and be done with it and move on. But that tied the series. I think that gave us an advantage to them.
You've mentioned you lost 12 pounds in that game, and it was hard to get it back on. How long did it take you to get back to your normal weight after that?
It's been a few days, but we're not the conditioned athletes that they are now. You know, I don't think an NHL guy now would lose 12 pounds because he doesn't have that much water and fat on him to burn. You know, I think back in the day we weren't as in good a shape, so we could afford to lose some, but my body just wasn't where it's used to being and feeling. You know, I know that my playing weight, my best playing weight was 156 pounds. That's what I played at, is 156. And I could tell you without stepping on a scale that I was over that weight or I was under that weight by the way I felt. And I'd only be over or under by 2 pounds. There's a difference. You know, so now they're much the same except for their specimens. Their bodies are machines and they're perfectly tuned and they're Ferraris and you know, something to be said about that. But you know, longevity, I didn't have many injuries. You know, maybe there's something to be said that my kind of body style reflected not as many injuries as today's athletes that are like Ferraris and are tight.
Yep, I've done a lot of reading about that and how some experts do believe that these guys have almost overtrained to the point where it's easier to get injured because those muscles are just so tight that there's no give. And I remember the baseball pitcher Rod Beck. He was a closer for many years, and he was known for looking more like he would have just walked out of a trucker bar than he did walking out of a baseball clubhouse. And he never hit the disabled list during his career. And somebody once asked him, you know, what was his secret of staying healthy? And he laughed and he said, "Oh, you can't pull fat."
Right.
I remember reading about that 5 overtime game that you'd mentioned that there was bacon in the locker room. Was that normal in those days to have bacon between periods, or was it just they were trying to find whatever they could to feed you guys between periods?
Well, because we were burning all the fat, I think they must have thought, let's put the fat back in. But yeah, they were just like, there was people in there. They were just constantly trying to find food, guys to keep going. You know, some guys ate, some guys didn't. You know, I wasn't one to be doing something like that. I was more Gatorades and water and just try to keep my hydration levels up. Some guys were eating the bacon. It didn't bother them at all. You know, eating pepperoni pizza. I was like, I'd be like having heartburn out there if I had something like that.
Yeah, I was the same way. On game day, for whatever reason, I didn't even want to eat. It was just, I couldn't eat on game day for whatever reason. But after that game, I made up for it. So I was listening to the, go on.
Yeah, on game days, I'd have a huge meal around 12:30, 1 o'clock. And that would be the only thing I'd eat the entire day until after the game when I could go and have chicken wings and beer.
You know, now that I'm playing beer league hockey, there's something to be said about that post-game beer where it tastes better than most beers. Doesn't even matter what they bring. It's going to be pretty darn good.
Yeah.
I was listening to the episode of 6 Degrees with Mike McKenna when he had you on, and you guys were talking about goalie equipment and how the equipment today compared to when you played, it's a little bit different. You know, young goalies today, they're not getting bruises like we did when we were younger. In fact, I remember I met Steve Larmer when I was a squirt and at a gathering, and somebody told him I was a goalie, and he jokingly goes, "Prove it, show me your bruises." And of course I had enough of them all over me because my chest protector was that 2-piece where the arms were 1 piece and then the belly piece looked like a baseball catcher's chest protector. So I had plenty of them. But in that interview, you said, you know, kids today, they don't have the fear of getting hurt. And that might be something that they're missing today that maybe made us better goalies because we had that fear. We were maybe a little bit quicker with our hands and our feet because of that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's, I think goalies of yesteryear were more trying to direct pucks and eat pucks rather than just block pucks.
Yep.
And you know, obviously the game evolved and the styles changed, and goalie coaches were a big part of that. Goalies went from small, quick guys to big, quick guys. That you know, really to beat them, you have to either beat them through a 5-hole early, or you got to put it maybe under the arms if you're lucky.
Yep.
Or you got to make a hell of a shot. And you know, I think that in my early years, that you could get beat with a shot, you know, that's six inches inside the post. And in today's game, you get beat 6 inches inside the post, and the coach is thinking, should we pull him now or should we give him one more?
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, I think that they do cover a lot of net, and everybody shows pictures out there of the goalies before and the goalies of today, and there's definitely more net to shoot at on any goalie in the old days than there is now.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, the players do shoot it harder. You know, but at the end of the day, there was more net to shoot at before. You know, and I don't think the answer is to go to a bigger net. It doesn't make sense. They keep trying to refine the equipment to make the guys protected, but yet give more net, and it's a tough war to fight.
I think if they'd go back to you know, wood sticks, almost treat hockey like they do baseball, where through the youth ranks you can use the composites, but at a certain age you got to use a wood stick so that the goalies aren't going to absolutely get annihilated, and then you could reduce the size of some of this equipment back to, you know, the sizes of the 80s and early 90s. I think that would work. You know, yeah, some teams might say, well, our stick budget's going to be blown up, but they'd probably find out that their stick budget's cut in half because you can buy probably a half dozen wooden sticks for the price of one composite these days.
Yeah, but don't forget, you know, in the late 80s, a guy named McGinnis shot the puck 105 miles an hour with a wooden stick. And
Yep.
Ally Afraidy shot the puck 105 with a, you know, so it's not like they can't bring the heat, and we were still wearing that same equipment.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, when they wound up, they had all of our attention, and it was like, I just hope I can survive this.
Yeah.
And, you know, in today's game, the guy who's 105, 106, the goalies are like dialed right in, like, come on, bring it. You can't hurt me.
Yeah.
And there's no issue with you trying to blow this by me, but if I get a piece of it, I'm stopping it. And, you know, massive. The one thing is that I think the massive stayed pretty consistent.
Mm-hmm.
When I came in, they built it on your face.
Yep.
With fiberglass, and it was heavier. But for the most part, even when I went into more generic ones where they just put foam inside them and the outside shell was all the same, I still felt pretty safe and secure in those. It was just more like your shoulders, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, back then if we were to go down, maybe our knees get exposed or whatever. And there's certain areas of the body that if it got you there, you know, it wasn't going to be good, you know. But
Yep.
But everything, you know, players now have these one-piece sticks, and every guy shoots at 100, 105 miles an hour, and sometimes those guys are shooting it on snapshots, so not even full slap shots.
Yep.
So that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's definitely a different game when we start talking the physics of it. That's for sure. Now, you mentioned the masks, and that's a perfect segue because I think when most people think of Ron Tugnutt, they think of your beer splash painting that traveled with you from team to team. But the story behind it is it was a nod to, you know, the owners of the Canadians when you were with them, Molson. You know, so I love that part of it. But what I also love is, you know, goalies of your, you know, the era of when you played, you guys had designs that it didn't matter what team you played on, you were able to bring it with you. You know, you think of Felix Potvin, Eddie Belfour, even Curtis Joseph, although there was that time while he was in Edmonton that he had the tribute with the splash to you. What did you think when you saw Cujo come out with the splash on his mask?
Well, of all the places, I didn't think it would be Edmonton. I think Grand Fear also had like a splash or something like, or dropped oils or something on his as well. And I know, you know, Edmonton Oilers was always a simple um, oil splash kind of thing, you know. But the Montreal one was, we were looking, searching for something, and it's such a traditional uniform, such a traditional logo, trying to find something that would really mix in nice with that was, you know, I said, well, I know it's not the colors of beer or nothing, but we could still have a splash effect. And for me, I always said that I was a pretty outgoing person. I love to laugh, I love to joke, and to me, splashing and that was a sign of having fun. And you know, so I said, well, let's try that. So I did that there, and then it just continued on after that. You know, Ottawa, obviously, like dropping the mask in a logo of melted gold, you
Yep.
know, and that's what it was, is like a splash. And, you know, Pittsburgh's penguin poo, you know, like, it's like splashing all over. And it
Yep.
just kept going on and on. And, you know, I like the design of the mask, and I've had a few people say that you know, it's one of their favorites
Yeah.
just because they just knew who it was and what it was, and you know, it was passed along, as you said, from one team to another.
Hmm. Well, that's what I loved about masks of that era is, you know, you guys stuck with the design concept no matter where you were. And as a viewer, we could tell who was in the net just by looking at the mask. We didn't have to look at the number where, you know, goaltenders today in the NHL seem to get a new mask every 4 or 5 weeks. You know, there's a few that stick with one. You know, Corey Crawford, I think, is an obvious one, and Fleury. Those two guys tend to stick with the design, but it's not something that they can take from team to team. That's the difference. You know, that's going to be the interesting thing with Henrik Lundqvist, I think, is what's he going to have in um, Washington now? Is he going to try and incorporate that crown, or what's he going to do?
Well, I'm sure he's gonna have the White House on it. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah, I would think so. You know, it'd be interesting if he had, you know, some kind of homage to, say, Don Beaupre and how he had the Capitol building on his helmet.
Yeah, I think there's a few things that Hendrick's going to be able to do there. I don't think he's going to go too crazy though. He's going to just look at the history of the area and come up with things like that. And I'm really interested to see how he does this year. I think on a really good team, and though he's older, but less ice time. I wouldn't be surprised if he's not the guy standing come playoff time if they actually
Hmm.
start the first game. But, you know, with a lesser ice time with a better team.
Yep. I had to laugh that one of his first public comments was telling Alexander Ovechkin that he's not going to step in there for one-timers in practice.
Yeah, he's seen enough of them over the years.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't remember where I read this, but one of your former Columbus teammates said, was quoted saying that off the ice, you don't look like an NHL starting goalie, but rather the team's accountant. Do you recall hearing that at the time back in the day, and what did you think about it if you did?
Yeah, I've had that a few times because I wore glasses and
Yeah.
I only wore contacts when I played. And in 2003, I had Lincoln surgery, so I didn't have either of them. But before that, I was a ski guy. You know, as I said, I played at 156
Mm-hmm.
and 5'10", 156, and like, I walk around and my suits would look tight and stuff because I was small and I looked like someone that maybe should have been on Wall Street and making investments or doing taxes or something. But, you know, like it's not to deny what we're saying because I kind of, but at the end of the day, when I put all the equipment on and I felt.
Yep. So, um, after retiring, well, before we get to that, I'm always curious talking to pro athletes, at some point you retire. And as the guys on Spittin' Chicklets have pointed out, sometimes it's not your choosing, but it's an injury or management. But at what point did you kind of sit back and go, you know what, it's been a fun ride. Maybe it's time for me to step away. What was that, point for you where it was just that realization?
I think when I signed the deal in Columbus, it was 4 years, and that was going to take me to 36. And in my mind, I said, I think that's going to be my, salute and see you later, sayonara. And,
Mm-hmm.
as we started playing the first 2 years, were really good in Columbus, and I was like, I might be able to play longer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really playing well, and I feel good about my game, and Doug McLean called and said, "Look, it's time. You've done your job. You've helped Mark the knee, and you've been the perfect soldier to help him along and turn him into a number one. He's ready, and it's time for you to move on." So he says, "I have two places. It's Buffalo or Dallas." And I looked at the situations, and at the time, to me, Dallas had a young, unproven guy in Turco,
Mm-hmm.
and I said, I think that that's the place I should go. And in my mind, I was going to go there and be the number one guy and help him along. But I don't think I was ready to see what kind of goalie he was and how good he was and what he could do that I couldn't do and how much I felt that the team wanted him in the net over me.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a puck playing skill that was off the charts, and he was stopping a lot of pucks. Like he was sensational. And
Yep.
he took the net and he ran with it, and I couldn't get it. And so that was when I started to realize, I said, okay, now I'm in a spot that I'm a backup, and it's very evident I'm a backup. But I still want to be that good guy. I still want to be the guy that can mentor him and kind of help him and move him in the right direction. But I think he's already exceeded me as from a talent standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
That he's an all-star goalie, and I just I continue to work hard, and I want like he needed any days off. So my class was fun. I enjoyed it. I would have liked to have played more, but uh, I would say more than anything that Marty basically took over. And I think the first year I was in Dallas, his goals against was 1.7. That year when I was thinking I was fighting for the number one job, and he just took it.
Well, and he was in an interesting position too, because I mean the organization let Eddie Belfour walk because they believed in him. So he definitely had some pressure on him to succeed, and he answered it. That's for sure. So after retiring, I've read you've been active in coaching as well, at the junior levels and with Hockey Canada. Did you always know you'd get into coaching, or was it something you were approached about afterwards and thought, yeah, I can do this?
Well, I think, as I mentioned earlier, I was kind of coaching as I was going
Mm-hmm.
with younger goalies. And, so I was building relationships, and I was, working with young goalies and trying to bring them. And, so it was kind of an easy transition into coaching, but that was from the Hockey Canada standpoint with our World Junior program and stuff. But I also did a year of color commentating with Hockey Night in Canada when I first retired, and that was way more difficult than I thought it would be. So I felt more comfortable in the coaching format, and again, being like the young kid I was, being on the ice again, because that's where I felt at ease. That's where I felt I could be myself, and that's where I felt I could help. So, so I did that with the World Junior program, and I worked with the Peterborough Peach Junior team 1 year in Oshawa with the Generals Junior team. So I stayed involved that way, and then I decided to take it to another level where I wanted to actually coach, not just goalies, but coach teams and like a coach. And so I was coaching kids minor hockey, both my children, and helping their teams and coaching their teams. And and then as they got older, I continued to want to coach, and so I got a provincial junior level here, which I thoroughly enjoyed that. I like that age group. It was fun. So I miss it because I'm not doing it now. I do miss it, but I think it's time for me to retire and work on my golf game.
What did you enjoy most about coaching?
I just think the compete, like, even though I wasn't playing, I still felt like, when we lost, I felt I was a big part of the loss. And when we won, I felt like I pulled all the right strings and did all the right things. And so I felt good about that. But it was definitely way easier to play than it is to coach. I felt as a goalie, I had way more control over outcomes than I do as a coach. But, I like to just actually being in the dressing room, talking hockey and doing things like that. That's stuff I like to do because that's what I grew up doing, and that's what I was accustomed to. So everybody wants to go back to what makes them feel at home, and hockey did that for me.
I agree, because when I graduated college, I did some high school coaching here in Minnesota, and it was I didn't necessarily miss playing games and all of that, but it was the practice and the fun had at practice and the locker room stuff that I missed. And so that's where being able to coach, you're able to get some of that and feed that part of your soul, I guess you could say. So we've talked a lot about hockey, and as I mentioned early on, one of the other sides of this podcast is to find out, what other goalies do to keep themselves grounded away from the game. And you mentioned your golf game, so obviously that's part of it. But what else do you do to fill your time and, that you enjoy away from the game of hockey?
Well, I do love the summers. We live up on cottage country in Peterborough area, and we boat and we jet ski and swim off the dock kind of stuff. And that's all stuff that we love to do. And, unfortunately, we don't get 12 months a year of that here in Canada. So come winter time, I like to take the odd trip down south and do a 4 or 5 day golf trip a couple times a year, just to, see the sun and have some fun. But also, both my guys, they were playing college hockey, and driving down south to watch them play. They're out when my oldest guy was playing in net and driving down there and watching him play. And then if he wasn't playing, then I'd go see the other one. And it was just I woke up Friday mornings not knowing which place I was driving to, but I was going to one of them.
Yeah.
And, do that a lot in your time to catch them playing. And, we could catch their games on the internet, but it's not the same. It's you got like to see something, you want to see everything, and to do that, you got to be there to see it. And more importantly, see them after the game and give them a hug and maybe a dinner or something, because they're not home for the whole winter.
Well, your boy Jake actually played college hockey at my alma mater, St. Mary's. So that was one of my favorite rinks to ever play at. It was just a nice atmosphere on game day, that's for sure.
In St. Mary's?
Yep. Yeah, I was, as I joke, I was a 4-year JV All-Star there. In fact, my episode that launched this week that we're recording was with my goalie coach at the time, who's still the sports information director there, Donnie Netto. And one of the questions I asked him was, what were you guys thinking when you chose me to be on the team? Because we had 24 goalies trying out that year for 6 spots, and somehow I got the sixth spot, and I held on to it for 4 years.
Jeez.
Yeah.
And then they had that rink with all that behind the net.
Yeah. I like that you point that out, because it was at Olympic rink, and at practice, we'd practice wraparounds, and I'd get that big, strong push to get to the wall to stop it. And then my first game at, it was Gustavus, they had a tiny rink that it was almost like the old Chicago Stadium, in that it wasn't even a regulation NHL rink. So they made up where they could, and that first puck that they run around the boards, I got that big, strong push. I hit the boards, I bounced off, and the puck went flying by me. And my coach was standing on the bench laughing, and at intermission, he goes, "I knew I forgot to tell you something about this rink."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So one of the things I'm doing to end out every episode is I got a list of about 10 rapid fire questions that I ask everybody, just some fun questions to give us a little bit of insight into your personality or things you've seen. So the first question is, what's the craziest coaching moment you saw in your playing days? And as I've been prefacing it, is kind of that Mike Keenan throwing the sticks on the ice, having a rant type of tirade.
I think the funniest thing I saw was, our massage therapist actually was yipping at Ty Domi, and he was going off on him, and then all of a sudden Ty went to come and hit someone right in front of our bench, and he on purpose whacked his stick right over the top of the trainer's head and dropped him. and then that was by far the funniest thing, because we knew he did it on purpose. Mm-hmm. And he was on the bench and he's laughing at him and stuff. And I remember that clearly, and how funny that was.
And how did the trainer take that after?
Oh, he needed stitches on the top of the head, so he got it pretty good. He left the bench and he came back and he holding like around his head and stuff, and Ty was on the bench laughing at him, and we all just said, "Oh my."
The next question is, what's your favorite all-time mask? It could be yours or another goalie's that you just thought, that's the best one.
Ooh, that's a good one. Gilles Gratton. It was the old style where you just had the eyes.
Yeah,
and it looked like
the lion, wasn't it?
Like a gnat. Oh yeah, it was sick looking. Like that in that era, to have that.
Yep.
It was really sick.
And I've heard some stories about him that he made most of us goalies look a little bit normal, that he had a few more screws loose than most of us. So they said it really fit him.
Well, that mask just because of the design I love, but my true favorite would have probably been Bernie Perron because he was my idol.
Yep.
Even though it was just a white mask with just the two little on the side.
Yeah.
Just that style of mask that a lot of those guys wore, just the white mask with the little eyes.
Yep.
I love them.
What is your favorite stick that you used in your playing days?
Oh wow, that'll date me. Hesplers.
Mm.
There was an original maker called Hespler.
Yep.
And then they came back and they made them again, and it was the weight of it and everything, how light it was, and how it was just perfect every time.
Yep.
Plus, they gave me a leather jacket to use it. I thought that was pretty good.
Well, and if I'm not mistaken, those were the sticks that Gretzky used at the end of his career as well. Not the goalie stick, obviously, but.
No, he did use Hesplers. You're right, and I think he was part owner of the business at the time.
Okay. So this is a fun one for us. I would say us seasoned goalies. What was your favorite youth hockey memory?
Oh, youth hockey memory. Oof, that's a good one. I enjoyed so much of my youth hockey. It's tough to. Like we won the Quebec Pee Wee tournament, but I got benched in the final game, so that ruined that.
Oh no!
Yeah, we had a goalie that had a beard at 12, and he was the starter. So it was the achievement for winning, I think, because we won the Quebec Pee Wee tournament, but minor hockey stuff. To me, the last 2 or 3 years, I looked forward to playing against Sean Burke.
Okay.
It was Sean Burke and I in the same league, toe to toe. He was with St. Mike's and I was with Toronto Red Wings, and I could not wait for those games because I wanted to look at him at the other end and play against him because I knew how good he was.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the times that I cherish the most.
Yep. No, I get that. So this next question is one that has been amusing. Is what's the best chirp you heard in your playing days?
Well, it would have been against Buffalo in the playoffs. It wasn't an actual chirp from a player, but from the top rafters they had this big sheet that they spray painted on. And they said, when the wheels are falling off, check your tug nuts. And that was, I sent the trainer to try to buy the sheet, and they wouldn't give it to him. But I thought I was going to hang that in my garage or something, because playoff time, we're driving into the rink and they got a car out there and my name's on the car and they're beating up the car. And then I go in there and there's a red sheet with, when the wheels are falling off, check your tug nuts. And I said, that's perfect.
That's a good one. When I was playing, it's not like I got many fans chirping at me, but there was just something when they did, I felt like, all right, I'm getting under their skin, and it almost made me want to play better. So
for sure.
What was the worst post-game beer that you've had the liberty of drinking?
Worst post-game beer?
Yep.
Is there such a thing as a bad beer?
You and I are in the same camp. For me, the closest thing to a bad post-game beer is when it's warm, when the guys, they realize on the way to hockey that they didn't have any at home, and so they stop and pick some up from the store, but they don't pull it out of the cooler. To me, that's the closest you can get to a bad beer.
Well, we had in Quebec, what was the name of it? It was a 7% alcohol beer. It was a Black Label, I think it was called. and it
Oh,
was like 7% beer, and it was so bad. And the trainer had it in the room after the game, and I was with Quebec, of course, so losing was a regular occurrence. So the trainer said, "Hey, win or lose, there's always booze." So, so I had one of those there. So I guess that would classify as the worst one.
now knowing you're a connoisseur of beer like myself, next time you're in Columbus, they have a new brewery there called Brew Dogs, and they have a hotel connected to the brewery that has tap handles in every room and fridges in the shower for your beer. But they have some really good beers there, and some of them go down really smooth, but are in the double digits for the ABV. So you got to be careful when you go there. So
I like that. That's awesome.
yeah, it's funny. My like you said, I have family there, and when my grandmother passed away, I flew out there, and I wasn't at my uncle's house more than 15 minutes before he told me and my dad to get in the car, and we're pulling out of the garage, and I just said, "How long is it to the brewery?" And he looks back at me, he goes, "How do you know where we're going?" I said, "Because I know you and my dad, and I know me. I know where we're going." And yeah, I sampled a few of their beers, and I liked every single one of them. So when you tape your stick, do you go heel to toe or toe to heel?
I go toe to heel.
Okay, now why do you do that?
Well, because like I tape my entire stick
Yep.
all the way up around the heel, and at the heel there's a special art that I always did the same thing,
Yeah.
um, and it just fit perfectly.
Okay.
Uh, but I always left a little piece of the stick showing that no one would really see.
Okay.
So there was one imperfection on the stick that I would leave open, and it would be such a small amount that no one would ever see it. But I did it on purpose all the time.
But you knew it was there,
Well, I
which
knew it was there, and I did it on purpose.
which means now I'm going to have to go back and look at old photos to see if I can spot it in any of them.
Well, you won't see it because it's on the back side of my stick.
Oh, geez. Um, so only two more quick questions. Next one is, what was your favorite number to wear?
I guess 31, but I always wore one growing up.
Mm-hmm.
Neat for me, I was the last one, number one for the Montreal Canadiens before they retired the number. So I was the last guy to wear it. Maybe I shouldn't have asked for that number when I went there. Um, I was the last guy to wear it, and I think they put that number into retirement after I wore it. But 31 became my number, I think,
Yeah,
in my later years where um, I, I seemed to have got on a roll with it, and I said, that's going to be my number.
I like it. Now, the last question is my favorite one to ask. What advice do you have for young goaltenders?
Well, I think the advice is, you have to be yourself, and um, don't get caught up in. You want goalie coaching, but you don't want over goalie coaching. You want bring your style and your game out because that's what you believe in, and that's going to make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And don't waver from that. If Dominik Hasek would have wavered on it, we never would have saw what we saw.
Yeah,
So I believe that your personality as a goalie has to come out. You have to be what you are, and make that the best you can be. But in the meantime, you have to have a base to fall back on that gives you some sort of credibility, I think, um, to get you through some tough times.
absolutely. That's great advice for young goaltenders. Um, Ron, thank you so much for your time. This has been a fantastic discussion. And again, thank you to your wife for helping set this up. It's been really fun, and I appreciate your time.
No problem, Joe. Thanks for having me.
What a treat to talk to a former NHL goaltender that I spent quite some time watching as a young goaltender myself. Thank you again to Ron, and we can't forget to thank his lovely wife for helping us coordinate things to make this episode happen. You can find Ron on Twitter at Ron Tugnutt 31. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube simply by searching for Washed Up Goalie, and I'll pop up. Visit washedupgoalie.com for some great hockey-related content, my beer league hockey video highlights when I'm not injured, and all podcast episodes. If you want some Washed Up Goalie or Tendy Talk apparel, be sure to click on the shop link as well. I need to give a big thank you to the hockey band The Zambonis for allowing me to use their music in my intro and when I close out all my episodes. Download their music on iTunes or listen to them wherever you stream music. I'm working on lining up other goalies to talk to, so if you are a goalie or have connections to one I should talk to, shoot me an email at washedupgoalie39@gmail.com or send me a DM on social media. And let's not forget, if you're a brand who wants to sponsor this show, be sure to reach out to me. I'll be happy to talk to you and figure something out. And finally, if you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe, rate, and comment on the podcast platform you're listening on. It's a quick action on your part that helps others find Tendy Talk. Until next time, keep your stick on the ice and your body square to the puck.
Hockey Week!